convention may shorten that a little.
Probably, yes.
Okay.
And as part of that, the court which used to do this, which used to ratify these foreign awards, was the Supreme Court. They handed it down to the Federal Appellate Court just to speed up the process. They have more people to do it. They have more infrastructure to do it, and it has worked quite well in the recent past.
Well, what? In fact, I wanted to ask you, in your view, in working with Brazilian companies and dispute resolution in Brazil, what are the most well-known or most respected or accepted arbitration institutions? I mean, before we started this recording, we were talking about, you said the ICC is very well known in Brazil. So why is that?
The ICC is quite well known because a lot of practitioners in Brazil in the area of arbitration have either been members of the ICC for a long time or worked much more with the ICC than with, for example, AAA. In some cases, the American Arbitration Association rules will be used, but it's much easier, much more common to see the ICC rules.
So the International Chamber of Commerce, the ICC, you think is just more known to Brazilian companies?
It's more known, and they have a local office, so it's easier to do it with the ICC.
And time to enforce. Actually, we have an ICC award right now. I mean, time to enforce, start to finish.
To enforce an arbitration.
Again, I guess that depends. That goes back to your issue about which depends on which city you're in.
Depends on which city, yes. But normally, this is something that could be done in a year and a half to 2 years if there is resistance on the part of a respondent.
So
of the loser.
And where would that in Rio?
In Rio, in São Paulo, probably closer to 2 years. In Rio, closer to 1 year and a half.
Okay. In Brasilia?
Brazil could go fast, but in Brazil it's pretty much a political center only of the country. So the courts in Brasilia will not entertain a lot of arbitration. Most of it is in Rio, São Paulo, and Belo Horizonte, except if you're dealing with the Federal Appellate Courts, but then it's just they only deal with it in terms of ratification of a foreign decision or foreign award.
Okay, so a local Brazilian arbitration award right now, you can say with a fair degree of confidence, you ought to be able to enforce it in, say, 2 years, if the other side has money.
Yes, and if it's well done and if lawyers keep pressing it all the time, you could reduce the time substantially.
Okay.
Recently we worked on a case in which in about 8 months it was already ratified and was actually it was a Brazilian arbitration. It was enforced by the local court, and the funds were collected.
Excellent. Good to hear that.
The most important issue at this point in Brazil in terms of arbitration is whether state-owned companies can subject themselves and accept arbitration clauses in international contracts. There is a current of thought in Brazil who defends the position that this would be a waiver of sovereignty. So these companies, state-owned companies, cannot subject themselves to international arbitration. The other current of thought, which is winning the debate at this point, is of the opinion that they can do it. It's not a question of sovereignty, especially if they are engaged in a commercial situation. If it's not an act that is an act exclusive of the state, then they can engage in international arbitration. This is not decided definitely, but this is how it's leaning. This is what they're leaning towards.
Wow. So it's a big question about enforceability of an arbitration agreement.
In these cases, yes.
Yes, got it. What about, well, you did mention to me at one point, though, that your firm is representing, or you mentioned, if you don't mind my repeating this, that you've got an arbitration award that you're defending that's going into about its 9th year of enforcement proceedings.
Well, we are at the 6th year. We can go up to 9 years.
Up to 9 years. Six years into a.
Yes, we are defending the party that lost arbitration, but it's not all our merit. It's also the fact that counsel to the other side hasn't pushed it as hard as they could, and if they don't push it hard, we were not going to do it for them. On the contrary, we would do everything we can to slow down the enforcement.
Okay.
So it will ultimately depend on how effective counsel is in making sure that the proceedings go forward and things don't stop for lack of action.
Got it. Let me ask quickly. You've mentioned, we've talked about some of the major international institutions, the AAA or the ICC. What about regional institutions? Do the chambers of commerce in Rio, São Paulo, do they also offer arbitration services?
They do. The Chamber of Commerce in São Paulo, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, AmCham, is particularly well liked by a series of practitioners. I've had my experiences with them. I'm not very fond of the end results, simply because I don't think they have enough experience in dealing with arbitrations, important arbitrations yet. It's a learning curve.
Yeah.
They are having more arbitrations every time, and they're having to deal with the issues they've never dealt with before. But I would not subject an arbitration to them.
They're just not. They're not there yet.
They're not there yet. Absolutely not.
Well, hey, what about the city chambers of commerce? Like, for example, the Rio or the.
They are very weak. They don't have any conditions to run arbitration group. You can do it with class institutions like the Investment Banking Association, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in Rio. In São Paulo, in the UK Chamber of Commerce also, they have pretty good structures in place. But none of them is old enough to have seen enough cases. There's always going to be something new. Brazil has a new arbitration law dating from 1997 and has eased considerably the series of proceedings, but has made one thing very clear. An arbitration in Brazil must follow the concepts of the Civil Procedure Code, not the rules, the concepts. And what happens is that in many of these institutions, the concepts of the Civil Procedure Code are not followed. For example, a witness may testify while the other one is in the same place, in the same room. This is not a good thing, of course, unless the parties agree. So some of these concepts are conveniently forgotten by some of these institutions.
So if you are agreeing to arbitration, whether it's in Brazil or some other place, and the proposal comes up to use a local chamber of commerce, you're probably better off, it sounds like, going for the ICC or the AAA.
If I'm given the choice, yes, I'll go with the ICC at this point.
Yeah. Okay.
There's also the London,
the LCIA.
LCIA, right. But we don't see a lot going through there. Once in a while there will be an arbitration there that involves a big Brazilian company, but in most cases ICC or AAA.
Okay. Well, let me ask you then about mediation. I mean, I know you know about mediation, given that you've practiced in lots of different places, but in terms